Hi everybody, welcome back. Glad you could tune in again. So in these last few videos, we've been thinking about the conflict between the Christian faith on the one hand and reductive materialism on the other. Remember, there's no conflict between Christianity and science, but there is a conflict between Christianity or Christian theism and the reductive materialist worldview that underlies most of the modern Western scientific enterprise. And what we've noticed again and again is that reductive materialism fails where Christian theism succeeds in explaining some aspect or other of how the universe works. To use the illustration that I've adopted a couple of times, Christian theism is a far more comprehensive platform upon which a scientist may build their scientific endeavour. It allows you to explain far more of the universe around us than reductive materialism does. And that might force upon you a question. Namely, if reductive materialism is obviously so broken, it's lacking in comprehensiveness in the kind of ways we've talked about, why does it persist? Why does it hang around like a bad smell for so long when there's clearly an alternative, Christian theism, which is so much more effective and fruitful at providing this stable and comprehensive platform for scientific investigation? And there are probably a number of answers to that. There's a theological answer, which has to do with the doctrine of sin and the blindness of the human heart. All of us in different ways prefer approaches to life which don't force us to relinquish foolish mistakes we've made in the past. That's true of Christians. It's certainly true of people who aren't Christians, and therefore one of the reasons why reductive materialism persists in the secular scientific academy is because the embrace of Christian theism would require the embrace of Christ, and that's a fairly high price to pay for lots of people for all kinds of reasons. But there's another reason why reductive materialism has persisted for as long as it has, and why it may not persist for so much longer. And in order to explain this, I want to give you a bit of a philosophy of science history lesson and take you back to the early 1960s to a book by a very famous philosopher of science called Thomas Kuhn, called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And in it, Thomas Kuhn explains how scientific progress takes place. He basically explained that there are two stages in scientific progress. The first is what we might perhaps be familiar with. Scientists have a particular way of looking at the world, a particular set of theories which are fairly powerful and seem to explain a great deal. And within that framework, they explore lots of different phenomena. And as they do so, they make gradual, steady progress in uncovering more and more of the details of the world in which we live. That is what we might call normal science. And that's how a lot of people imagine that scientific progress takes place. And as people encounter new phenomena, they adjust the theory, and then that's all fine, and then they take the next step forward, and so on, and on we go. Well, that's true up to a point, but Thomas Kuhn pointed out that there is a second and less well-acknowledged aspect to the process by which scientific progress is made. As new insights are accumulated within this existing framework, Kuhn explained, what happens is that sometimes problems arise. There are anomalies, as he called them, aspects of the phenomena that are being investigated that just don't make sense within the existing theories. You've got your theory and it explains pretty much everything, but then you spot something, and however much you tweak the theory, you just can't make this data fit. That's an anomaly. And over time what happens is the number of anomalies in a particular field will increase, and the pressure from those anomalies upon the theory will increase. And eventually you get to a point which he calls a point of crisis, where what is needed is not just another small step within this particular framework of operation, but a dramatic shift, a revolution, he would say, or a paradigm shift. What we need is to abandon this supposedly comprehensive view of this area of science entirely and replace it with another one which will make sense of all the stuff that the previous one made sense of, and all of the anomalies that couldn't be understood within the previous framework. He called that a paradigm shift, and that phrase, a paradigm shift, has entered common vernacular, hasn't it? We talk about a paradigm shift, meaning a dramatic change in outlook. The kind of things that he's talking about had been exemplified previously. If you go back to the Middle Ages, for a long time people thought that the Earth was at the centre of the solar system. Actually, they thought the Earth was at the centre of the universe as well, but certainly at the centre of the solar system. And it was a dramatic paradigm shift to realise that, no, you could make sense of the motion of the stars and the planets in the sky far more sensibly, and you could also make sense of a whole bunch of other things if, in fact, the Sun is at the centre of the solar system and the planets orbit around it rather than orbiting around the Earth. That's a paradigm shift, a dramatic change in outlook. Similar paradigm shifts took place in other aspects of the sciences with the introduction of quantum mechanics and general relativity at the beginning of the 20th century, in the late 19th century. These were not just tweaks to previous theories, these were dramatically new theories which were needed in order to explain things that just couldn't be explained with the previous framework of operation. Now, what I want to suggest to you is it's very possible that what we're seeing with these aspects of the world around us that can't be explained within a reductive materialist mindset is the accumulation of anomalies. And that what's actually happening in the decades in which we live is that the pressure from those anomalies upon the reductive materialist worldview is increasing more and more and more. And eventually we will get to the point where there is a sudden and quite dramatic abandonment of that reductive materialist mindset, and maybe an embrace of a Christian theist stance which would be able to explain not just all the stuff that reductive materialism could explain, but all those other things besides the mind, moral awareness and so on that we've talked about in previous videos. And what's intriguing is that you can see some of the signs of that approaching paradigm shift in our day. There are some telltale giveaway signs that tend to precede the paradigm shift in the sciences that Kuhn was talking about. The first, of course, is the accumulation of anomalies, the accumulation of things that just can't be explained. One of the most fascinating ones, I think, in the present scientific world is the complete perplexity on the mind which exists in the mainstream scientific literature. It's a completely fascinating question, and one on which people are making almost no progress at all. And as we've seen, there are good reasons for that. It just won't fit within the reductive materialist mindset. But then as the crisis approaches, what tends to happen is that the opposition to the paradigm shift, which everyone kind of knows is necessary, increases. People become more and more hostile to the change which it seems is necessary. This has certainly been the case in the past. People have been immediately prior to dramatic changes in scientific outlook, people have expressed boundless optimism about the existing paradigms with which other scientists were becoming dissatisfied. So famously, Lord Kelvin, a great scientist, remarked around about 1900 that there's nothing new to be discovered in physics now. In 1900, he was saying nothing new to be discovered in physics. Similar comments were made by Heinrich Hertz and Simon Newcomb and Albert Michelson in the end of the 19th century. Albert Michelson in 1894 said, "The more fundamental laws and facts of physical science have all been discovered." He said that in 1894, which is a little bit embarrassing because 11 years later, in 1905, Einstein published his little paper on the electrodynamics of moving bodies and slightly threw the cat among the physics pigeons with the introduction of special relativity, which it turns out is a pretty fundamental set of laws about physics. You see there's a lesson to be learned here. It's a mistake to be too optimistic and dogmatic about the sufficiency of your pre-existing scientific worldview at the point where the inadequacy of it is being exposed increasingly. But that seems to be what's happening today. It's happened in the last few years, actually, you will have noticed an increasing number of atheist scientists becoming more vocal in their hostility to Christian theist attempts to say the sort of things I've been saying in these videos. That is, Christian theism provides a better way of explaining the world. You find Daniel Dennett, Richard Dawkins, Peter Atkins and others arguing more and more vociferously that no, reductive materialism really can explain everything. And I really want to kind of say, look, we've been here before. We've been here before in a context where it looks like your paradigm is broken and a paradigm shift is just around the corner, and yet people cling loudly and vocally to the previous system despite its obvious inadequacies. To my mind, it suggests that there's another reason why, just from a scientific standpoint, we shouldn't be at all intimidated by the strength of the opposition to a Christian theist worldview. We'd expect strong opposition, precisely because that reductive materialist worldview is broken. And who knows, we may live to see the recognition of that on a wider scale. The Lord bless you, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.